Hi, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so grateful you're here. Today, we're talking about something that I know so many spiritual mums carry quietly in their hearts. Those moments where you look at your child and think, something feels deeper than just behavior. Maybe your child has emotional explosions that seem to come out of nowhere. Maybe they're highly anxious. Maybe they can't sleep. Maybe they cry constantly or refuse school. Or maybe they just seem more aggressive one moment and then deeply sensitive the next. And maybe despite how much love and support you give them, you still feel like you're missing something. If that's you, I want you to take a deep breath for a moment and hear this. You are absolutely not failing as a parent. Sometimes children are not, brackets naughty. Sometimes they're just feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling overwhelmed emotionally, energetically, nervous system wise, spiritually. And today I really want to open this conversation in a compassionate, grounded way because I believe so many children are carrying more than they know how to verbalize, especially sensitive children, especially the children who feel everything deeply. When we hear the words nervous system dysregulation, it can sound very clinical or complicated. But honestly, what it often looks like in real life is simply a child whose system no longer feels safe, calm, or emotionally regulated. And children they're not always able to explain this. They feel that overwhelm and they can't explain it the way that adults would. Adults might say, I'm feeling emotionally drained. um, I'm feeling like I've just reached capacity. But children, they don't usually say these kind of things. Instead, it comes through in behavior. It comes through tears, shutdowns, screaming, refusing to go to school, perfectionism, hyperactivity, controlling behavior, separation anxiety. And sometimes it comes through in physical symptoms like tummy aches and headaches, exhaustion, or sleep struggles. And the hard part is many children don't actually understand what they're feeling themselves, especially younger children. They just know something inside feels uncomfortable. So let's start with emotional explosions because I think many parents experience this. Sometimes a child can appear fine all day and then suddenly explode over the tiniest thing. It might be the wrong colored cup or a sibling touching something or being asked to brush their teeth. And as parents, it can often feel confusing because the reaction doesn't match the situation. But often the explosion isn't actually about the cup or the toothbrush. It's accumulated emotional overwhelm finally leaving the body. Many sensitive children spend all day holding on to things, holding stimulation and emotions, holding on to sensory overload, pressure from school environments, even social stress, holding on to the energy of other people, and eventually their nervous system simply reaches capacity. Another sign parents often misunderstand is perfectionism. Perfectionism can actually be a nervous system response. Some children become deeply dysregulated by the feeling of getting something wrong. They might cry when they make mistakes or avoid trying new things, become controlling, become anxious about schoolwork or performance. Underneath that is often a child who does not feel emotionally safe with uncertainty. I've worked with children where their energetic field becomes incredibly tight, almost like they're trying to hold themselves together perfectly because this internally they're feeling overwhelmed. And these children are often incredibly sensitive souls. Not all overwhelmed children become loud, some become very quiet. Some withdraw emotionally. Some isolate in their rooms, stop talking about their feelings, Some appear disconnected or numb. And parents sometimes worry, have I done something wrong? Why won't they open up to me? But shutdown is also a nervous system response. Sometimes children disconnect because their internal world feels too big to process. I see this with one of my own daughters as well. When she feels emotionally overwhelmed, she goes very quiet, and I've learned that in those moments, she doesn't need pressure or lots of questions straight away. What she really needs first is connection. She needs cuddles, she needs reassurance, she needs to feel emotionally safe again before she can open up about what's actually troubling her. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder for us as parents. Sometimes children cannot access their words until they feel safe in their body and their nervous system again. Sometimes connection needs to come before conversation. And for sensitive children, especially, feeling emotionally held can completely change how safe they feel to express what's happening inside them. Aggression and anger is a really important one too. Anger is very often a protective emotion. When children feel unsafe, overstimulated, emotionally flooded, or energetically overloaded, aggression can become the nervous system's way of trying to regain control. And this doesn't make your child bad. It means their system is struggling. And then, honestly, I can relate to this myself as a mum. There are times where I've said yes to too much, and I'm carrying the mental load of the home and juggling the children and the animals and the responsibility and the work. And then suddenly more gets piled on top, like sick kids or sick animals, more washing, more housework, more emotional demands, and I can feel myself becoming so overwhelmed internally that the smallest little thing suddenly feels enormous. Something that normally wouldn't bother me at all can suddenly trigger frustration or anger. And what actually shocks me sometimes is how quickly I snap. That's usually my indicator that I've taken on too much and my own nervous system is overwhelmed. And it's not because I am being a cranky mum, it's because my system has just reached capacity. And I think that's such an important perspective when we look at our own children too. Sometimes anger isn't the real problem. Sometimes anger is just the signal that their nervous system has reached capacity and no longer knows how to process everything it's carrying. I recently worked with a child who was experiencing huge emotional outbursts at school. What I intuitively saw during the healing was a child whose energetic system felt incredibly porous, almost like he was carrying the emotional weight of everyone around him. He was absorbing energy constantly. His nervous system felt exhausted. So after the session, his mum shared that he was noticeably calmer within, instantly. He was more cooperative, emotionally settled, and stopped procrastinating at bedtime. And, it's important to remember it's not all about perfection, it's about support. Sometimes children simply need help processing what their system has been carrying. School refusal is another huge one I see, and I think many sensitive children are being deeply misunderstood in this area. For some children, school environments can feel extremely overstimulating emotionally, socially, energetically, and sensorily. Noise, pressure, social dynamics, structured environments, performance expectations. Some children are absorbing all of it. And when the nervous system becomes overwhelmed, avoidance becomes protection. And this doesn't mean we stop supporting our children with school, but it does mean we look deeper than simply they're being difficult. So, sleep struggles and separation anxiety. Children who are emotionally overwhelmed often struggle to fully relax into sleep because sleep requires the nervous system to feel safe enough to let go. I've seen many sensitive children whose energy feels extremely busy at bedtime, almost like static energy moving through their field. One of my own children is incredibly energetically sensitive. When she becomes emotionally overloaded, I often notice her sleep becomes disturbed first. During healing sessions, I frequently see this static-like energy build up around in her field. And once it begins clearing, she becomes calmer emotionally and falls asleep much more easily. And again, this isn't about, fear or, we're doing anything wrong. It is about understanding that sensitive children often process life very deeply. So, why sensitive children feel so much? I truly believe many children today are highly emotionally aware. Some are deeply empathetic, and some absorb the emotions of others. Some are sensitive to conflict, environments, noise, world events, and emotional tension around them. And because children don't always have the emotional vocabulary to explain what's happening internally, their body communicates it instead. So this can be through behavior, emotions, dysregulation. And honestly, I think this is where compassion becomes so important, because punishment alone cannot regulate a nervous system. Connection helps regulate a nervous system. Safety helps regulate a nervous system. Feeling seen helps regulate a nervous system. So, how energetic healing can support children gently? This is one of the reasons I felt so passionate, about the work I do, because energetic healing creates a gentle space for emotional processing. It supports the child holistically, so emotionally, energetically, spiritually. And during these sessions, I often see emotional build-up sitting within the energetic field long enough for the children to really feel it over time, and they can't consciously explain it themselves. Sometimes the healing supports, an emotional release or grounding, or it can be nervous system regulating, sometimes helping the child feel emotionally safer within themselves. And often parents say things like they seem lighter, they're calmer, they're sleeping better, there's less conflict, they seem more like themselves again. Not because the child, is intentionally being difficult, because the system actually receives the support. So, before we finish today, I really just want to speak directly to the mums listening. If your child is struggling emotionally, if you feel exhausted, if you feel like you're constantly trying to hold everything together, please know this. You are absolutely not failing. You're not being too soft. You're not imagining what you are feeling, and your child is not giving you a hard time. Most likely, they are having a hard time. And in fact, the fact that you are here listening to conversations like this tells me how deeply you care. And that matters. Your love matters. Your intuition matters. And your presence matters. If this episode resonated with you and you feel your child may be emotionally or energetically overwhelmed, I'd love to support you through a children's rainbow recalibration session inside of Heather Clark Energy Healing. These sessions are designed to gently support children emotionally, energetically, and spiritually through intuitive healing and higher self-guidance. You can also join my free Facebook community, Rainbow Children of the Light, where we explore conscious parenting, emotional support tools, and spiritual connection for families. And if this episode touched your heart, I'd love for you to share it with another mum who may need this reminder today. You are not alone on this journey. I'll see you in the next episode. Sending so much love to you and your little one.